Okay. Should we just go around really quick? Rafael Ortega, Commissioner, District 5.
Commissioner Fretham, District 1.
Commissioner McGuire, District 2.
Commissioner Mattis Castillo, District 3.
Commissioner Carter, District 4.
Commissioner McDonough, District 6.
Commissioner Reinhardt, District 7.
John?
Good morning, John Sicklin, Director of Communications and Public Relations.
Good morning, Allison Winters, Deputy Director of Communications.
Christine Grill, I run the Open Data Portal.
Kathy?
Hey everyone, Kathy Hedin, Deputy County Manager of Health and Wellness and Acting County Manager today.
And then Kirsten, would you like to introduce you and Justin?
Hello, Kirsten Boudreau, Director of Research and Communications at Meter.
And Justin Garvey, Director of Brand Strategy at Meter.
Okay. Are we good, John? Is that pretty much the staff?
I think we've introduced everyone. Thank you, Commissioner.
Okay, thank you, everybody. And why don't I just turn it over to you, John? I think I just did your piece here with the intro, but go ahead.
Very good, thank you. So we have a presentation for you today, and I'll ask Allison to share her screen so that we can bring that up in coordination with me here.
Me, I'm getting a message that I can't share. Can you check the settings quick?
Yes, thank you, Allison, for the reminder.
While we're getting that started, Commissioners, I might just say thank you for the opportunity to present today. This is a version of a presentation that we have provided to our executive team, our senior management team, and our IPR service team over the past weeks and months. And we've sort of got it in 3 different parts. So I'm going to do kind of a setup and introduction, and then Allison's going to talk about the services that we in the communications division provide, the sort of update that we were doing regularly for the board sort of prior to the onset of COVID-19 and the pandemic. Come back and give you an update on that. Then we'll hand it over to Christine Grill, who will give you an update on the work we've been doing on the Open Data Portal. And then we're happy to introduce our advertising marketing partners at Meter, who will do a presentation there. And then we'll have an opportunity for questions and discussion. So the purpose of the workshop is we're not asking for anything from commissioners today. This is informational only. And then there were some questions that were raised in the budget meeting that we hope to be able to do a little deeper dive on today in this workshop so that we can provide a better understanding of that to the board. Then of course we get to meet Meter here in their presentation later on, and then we'll have that opportunity for questions and discussion, as I mentioned. So I wanted to start just by giving a quick history on the communications division. And many of you know this, but we haven't been back to see you in some time, so I thought we might just do a quick refresh. So our division was created in January 2017, following the board's action in October of 2016 to fulfill the strategic priority of enhancing countywide communication strategies and resources. So what was involved in that was consolidating staff who were doing communications work from throughout the county in different departments. So back at this time, for instance, Allison worked in communications, reporting up through the director of Parks and Rec when she worked in that area. And we had other communicators across the county who did that. So in terms of bringing those staff together in this professional new division, as well as augmenting with some roles like graphic designer and digital communication specialist, we've grown to now have a 16 staff complement. And our structure follows the service team. So for instance, we have Chris Burns, who is the manager of the team that really focuses on health and wellness. Megan Fournier is the manager who really focuses on the strategic team and information public records. And then Christy Saxbig is our manager whose team focuses on the economic growth and community investment area. And the org structure is there at ramseynet.us/communications, where you can see how that all works. That's right on our intranet site. And if there's time later in the workshop and you'd like to go through that, we're happy to jump over to that. Another milestone was launching the open data portal. This fulfilled another strategic priority, which was open and accessible data. That was done in September of 2017. And as I mentioned, Christine's going to talk more about the work that she's been doing in that area. Another milestone is a countywide advertising marketing master contract, which has been effective since January 2020. And Meter is our marketing and advertising partner who handles our paid media placement. They're going to talk more about what they've been doing in their section. Finally, our performance measures are available at ramseyco.us/CPR metrics. So that talks about our performance measures and a deeper dive on some of the specific metrics that we have. And we can visit that later in the presentation if you like as well. Now I'll hand it over to Allison, our Deputy Director of Communications, to talk about the work we do in the Communications Division in terms of the tools we use and how we work with our client departments. Oh, I see, I see Commissioner McDonough has his hand up.
Mr. Chair, I don't know if you want to take questions during the presentation or wait till the end, but John, I had a question for you on your first slide. You know, when we started this, it was kind of an incremental brilliant. You gave the example of Allison, but there was still some siloed communication in some departments. I can think of public health as one. Have we made that transition now? Are all communications being managed through your department, or do we still have some departments that are doing their own communications through their org chart?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner McDonough, the consolidation from 2017 set that brought those staff together, reporting up through the Communications Division. So those staff, in your example there of public health, Chris Burns, our manager of health and wellness now, was previously essentially the communications manager or PIO of public health. But now his interest in his work and the work of he and his team is focused on that entire service team. So Chris continues to do a lot of work with public health, as do Megan Coral and Greta Stark and his team. But he's responsible also for ensuring that that team handles the communications needs of the entire service team, and from veteran services to social services, FAS, and so on.
So, Mr. Chair, if I could just clarify, so is Chris doing that just in that team then? So we still got some fracture, or is he, or is there a connection to you and your team and the work he's doing in that team?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner McDonough. So all of the people on Chris's team, Allison's team, Megan's team, and Christie's team all report up through me in the Communications and Public Relations department. Thank you.
Hey, John, excuse me. I was just answering you, Jim. I cannot see all the screens at the same time. So, John, if you see a hand raised, you know, then answer the question. But I won't be able to. I cannot see on my screen because your presentation lets me see so many hands at one time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Happy to do that. And I might suggest that as we go on here, so maybe we could take questions at the end of Allison's section, and then maybe questions at the end of Christine's section. Okay, thank you. So I think we're to Allison. Take it away, please.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. So within the Communications Division, our service focus is really on providing strategic, integrated external and internal communications campaigns. So this involves aligning messaging across multiple channels and mediums to help keep residents, our partners, employees, and other stakeholders informed of the county programs and initiatives that we have going on. So on your screen, you should see an example from last year from our communication supporting elections and voting in 2020. And so you'll see a variety of pieces and just a small fraction of the pieces that we worked in collaboration with elections on for that campaign, including a postcard example, Ramsey Net communications, social media, signage, websites, and the open data portal. And across all these channels, we strive to keep our messaging professional, consistent, so that people are continuing to have those interactions to reinforce the messaging around county services. I'll highlight on this example, it's a little hard to see at this scale, but both the postcard and the signage piece show our continuing and increasing work with departments to bring in translated messaging to ensure that our communications pieces are becoming more equitable and accessible for all residents. So for most of our projects, we use a digital first approach. That allows us to meet people where they're at as we become an increasingly more online world. So helping connect residents with messaging, whether they have their phones in their pockets, whether they're using a tablet for schoolwork, or whether they're at a desktop for their job. It also allows us to help connect people with information more quickly and to share our updates more quickly. So you'll see examples on the screen from some of the different digital tools that we're able to pull into our campaigns, including one-way mass text messaging with some updates there on road projects and cross-country ski trails, social media that we use for almost all campaigns that we touch, an example from the data portal and the popular annual financial report, as well as the e-blasts and e-newsletters that we're sending out near daily. The example on the screen that you see is our September 2021 resident newsletter, and we've been sending out that monthly e-newsletter since 2017. So not everything that we do is digital. We still pull in several other additional services and tools, such as print. We recognize that not all of our residents are able to consistently be online, so there's still definitely a place in print for the work that we're doing, whether it's brochures, mailers, signage, or other print pieces. We also support media relations for the county, so proactive to let reporters know about the good work that we're doing with the county, as well as reactive media relations. We do event support and promotion. So on your screen, you'll see an example from the Dale Street Bridge reopening celebration that we had this summer. We support employee communications every day on RamseyNet and through Ramsey News. We also provide some video and photography skills in-house, as well as professional consultation to departments on talking points, speeches, presentations, and other strategic communications needs. And then we also pull in advertising and paid marketing. And we'll talk more about that when we get into the meter segment of the presentation later on. So we strive to partner with all departments in all areas across the county. As John talked about our structure, we're aligned to the service team structure so that our team has different department and service team contacts that can build those close relationships with the different business partners. And we also offer the communications help desk as a one-stop shop entry for somebody that needs help, whether it's with a small website update or a bigger strategic campaign. And we're really here to be strategic partners and to work with the different departments across the county. We strive to work collaboratively every time we approach a project to help develop communication solutions that are based on their business needs and their target audience, as well as our professional expertise in communications. So it may start as a conversation like, I need a flyer or a press release, and we really strive to have that deeper conversation around what the business need is. So yes, there may be a role for a flyer or a press release, but we can develop that into a bigger integrated campaign that leverages all the tools that we have at our disposal. And ideally, we're working with departments to pull us in upstream so that we can set up that timeline for success and build in that amount of time that's needed to get messaging out to residents and to other stakeholders so that they can be informed when necessary. So I will pause there for any questions.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
this is, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of questions. So do we know how many of our residents have internet access and, capability of doing this versus those that don't? I mean, I agree that we should start virtually. This goes back to your slide that says, we're really starting everything virtually. We're doing a lot that way. And I think it is greater access to people, but do we know how many of our people actually can't get online or don't have that capacity? Do we have any idea about that?
I might take that one, Mr. Chair. Commissioner McGuire, this is John. We know just from general surveys that are done of the state or the region or the Twin Cities, what those percentages are like and look at those over time, it's a vast majority of people that have internet access either from equipment they own, phones, laptops, or desktops, or have access through public computing like libraries and such like that. So I can pull you the latest information we have, but we do know it is the vast majority of Twin Cities residents that are online.
Okay, so thank you for that. Yeah, I was just thinking, I was hoping it was in the 90%, but I don't know if it's that high. So if you do get a number, that would be great. I mean, I just want to know, I like I said, I agree with our efforts in this area, but I just wonder how many people we're losing. And, sometimes I know seniors are getting, way more competent. My mother's on a Zoom call right now that she's 94 and she sets up her own Zoom calls. So, I mean, I know they're capable of doing that. She's doing an exercise class in the other room now. So that she set up herself. So they can do it. I just am curious how many people how many people do have that access. So thanks for that. And then my other question is, I love our newsletter. Remind me if that's something we can forward. Like my office also does a newsletter, but I'd like to forward that. So do we just forward that link then like in my newsletter? I don't want to repeat everything that's in the county newsletter. We can just forward that link on to other people with mine. Like for more information, go to this newsletter. Is that possible?
Mr.
Yes.
Chair, Commissioner McGuire, Allison, did you want to take that one?
I can, John, unless you were ready.
No, go ahead. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioner McGuire. Yes, we keep a running archive of the newsletter at ramseycounty.us/updates. And so people can go there either to subscribe directly, or you can grab the links to each of the past issues. So for instance, in the District 2 newsletter, you could share, here's the link to the county September countywide e-newsletter.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. We usually pull a lot from the county website for my newsletter anyway, just the ones that pertain to my own district. So we already use a lot of that information. So, but thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Commissioner Carter?
Thank you. I don't know if this is early. I'm just formulating this question, but really appreciating the update on this important area of work, communications and marketing, that has so much to do with how we are and whether we are effective in getting out the information that our community drastically needs in order to pursue the health and wellness that we want. And I am just, as I look at this and seeing how you are striving to keep our messages professional and consistent and to ensure that we have translation and equity. I'm thinking about all that we've learned over this past year and a half about the importance of community voice also, and wondering about the extent to which that coordination, when we reach out to community, to ensure that we are getting out messages in creative and unique ways, how we're coordinating that is the question I'm asking upfront. And I think about the importance, of course, of ensuring that we're working with young people, particularly BIPOC youth and businesses and nonprofit organizations, and the extent to which we've placed that partnership in the center of the work that we're doing, and wanting to ask about how that's coordinated. I don't know if I'm early in the presentation and asking that, or if you've already planned to address that somewhere later, and as we talk with Meter about that as well. So let me just seed that question. I know it'll be a little bit more developed perhaps in the second section of this work.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Carr, if I might take the opportunity to say some things on that. Harking back to our budget conversation, I think we had the opportunity to talk about this a little bit in that forum as well. But this happens on several levels. So there's the sort of day-to-day interactions with our departments who are, let's use a road project or a workforce type of engagement, where we're learning from the work of departments and corresponding with our departmental partners, what they're hearing from people who are corresponding with them about projects or initiatives or anything like that. And we're able then to start incorporating that and audience into our approach and ensuring that we're using the types of communications, the means of communications, and to reach those audiences and tailor that content or create new content for that. An example that comes to mind is working with Director Ling Becker out of Workforce around a youth initiative that started with a conversation and led to an entirely new section on our website. There's a digest of our youth resources, for instance. So that's one of the ways in which we keep this continuous improvement cycle happening. Another one is direct engagement with residents, whether we're getting, or audience, I should say, whether we're getting messages over through Facebook, through public posts, or through individual posts from our community, or emails, or other types of correspondence like that. So we're always working to continuously adapt and move in the direction that we're hearing there, balancing it against our other priorities and needs, and ensuring that we're keeping our pulse on that. And then there's over the past year and a half during the pandemic here, working closely with the Equity Action Circle and Trusted Messengers to work specifically on types of campaigns or types of messages. So for instance, right now we're in a conversation, we had a conversation just last Friday with our team there to talk about what types of messages and what shall we consider when we're talking about moving into the vaccination of youth, for instance, as we start to prepare for getting the word out on that and developing a campaign. What are some of those touch points that we should have in our back pocket from community to help structure our approach to that? And then finally, I might just mention that as you'll hear from Meter, their advertising and marketing really does a scan of those available community media outlets and partners that we can leverage to place those messages in ways that most effectively meet our community.
I want to thank you. If I might, Mr. Chair, extend a additional comment, and that is, as you were mentioning workforce, I know that there have been efforts to look toward young people for the creative process itself. And those young people, BIPOC businesses and nonprofit organizations as partners in our work to communicate is important for a number of reasons. It is an area, of course, of future workforce opportunity. And so workforce, I know, has been trying to create those pathways. As we look toward strategies for communication in the future, I'm hoping that we are thinking of how we can align those strategies for communication together with some of the work that we're doing, whether it be in workforce or in human services or other areas that help to engage those young folks, their creative process, young folks, businesses, as well as community organizations. A comment and encouragement, and hopefully we'll get additional feedback in that arena as well.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Carter, if I may, two examples come to mind in that very space. One is when we developed that youth page that I referenced earlier in conjunction with Workforce, Ling and her team brought on youth to help to inform that process from the content and creative. So they were working directly with our staff to help build that out. And then another, I think, very exciting program we have going on right now is we in the communications division currently have 2 Right Track Plus interns through that program. And part of their work is going to involve telling the story of the Right Track Plus program. So we're working with them to help to talk to their peers in the program and tell that story through their eyes, so that when we conclude that program, we can use this as part of looking back, what were the successes and what were the stories of the youth that participated. And we're doing that by engaging our own Right Track interns to do the communications work behind that.
Thank you. That is particularly exciting, imagining the kind of video and production that can come out of that stands as a representative voice for those that we're talking to. I really appreciate hearing more about that. Thank you.
Go ahead, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think we're to the point where Christine Grill is going to tell us about the open data portal and provide an update there. Please take it away, Christine.
All right. So thanks, John, and thank you, Chair, for having me here today. As John and Allison mentioned, I'm going to walk you through a few updates and projects that I've been working on with departments from across the county. And first, I'm going to take you to the portal itself. As a quick reminder, you go to Your Government, Open Government, Open Ramsey County. And while you're on that page, you can stop by and subscribe to our open data email notices. One of those went out Monday. I think they're very informative. And then you can click on the link to the open data, Open Ramsey County. And on our site, we're going to take you through some data stories today. And they allow us to visualize this data and provide context. For all of these stories, we also provide the data for anyone to use and access and dig deeper. So you're just going to sort of see the top layer of the content on the portal. We won't dig too deep into the data today. And so over the last few years, we've seen quite a few changes with the data portal and the data program. We've worked to build staff capacity through a voluntary group of department data coordinators who are using and learning the portal in addition to all of their regular duties. This group meets with me monthly to discuss portal changes and updates, talk through potential new projects, and to provide a venue for continuing education. And so I'll dig into the stories now. So the first page I'm going to show you, John referenced earlier, this is the communications and public relations metrics page. And this is the open data portal section of that page. So open data portal usage has been growing since 2018. The COVID-19 case dashboard and the 2020 absentee voting dashboard drove a lot of our usage over the last year. Numbers are coming back down to where we would expect as that COVID information is accessed less frequently. And then we've also been working with the departments to produce more content, more dashboards and data sets. Between December of 2018 and December of 2021, we went from 29 story pages and dashboards to 161, and from 104 data sets to 479. And then to promote the data portal, we provide content via social media, our open data newsletter, cross promotion on ramseycounty.us and RamseyNet, and we also create print materials like rack cards and handouts when that's appropriate. So that's the first story. Second one that we're going to show you is a social vulnerability map. We created this map early on during the pandemic in partnership with GIS, our software vendor, and the food and basic needs team. And this gave us information we needed on specific areas of vulnerability within the county. And so this displays the social vulnerability index scores and related data by census tract. And a social vulnerability index score essentially helps public health officials and planners better prepare and respond to emergency events. The higher the risk score, essentially, the more vulnerable the population is to external stresses. So this was something we created early on to help target the resources that we were providing across the county, particularly related to food and basic needs. Second dashboard is the COVID-19 case dashboard, of which I believe you're very familiar with at this point. We created this in partnership with our friends in public health. Over the course of COVID-19, we've developed a very close working relationship with public health. And this dashboard has been viewed more than 130,000 times. Also, at the beginning of the pandemic, we worked on a service delivery dashboard to help outline the ways that we undertook significant changes in how we provide services. So we worked with folks from Incident Command and later Enterprise Services to track and highlight the ways that in-person contacts were initially minimized and phone and internet and drop-off or pickup services were increased. And then as we've adapted and moved out of that original emergency response, it also tracks our movement back to reopening. So a good example of that is that first chart you see, the weekly library traffic. Those numbers that are annotated there in the middle of the line, that is when we went from pickup only for individuals being able to go back and browse in those individual libraries. So that's the checkout of materials. And you can see that rise back up as the pandemic continues on. The next dashboard was the Ramsey County investment and support efforts. This helped us outline the way that we spent CARES funding on the programs within Ramsey County. So we did this for programs ranging from home meal delivery all the way to the Small Business Relief Fund. And here's an example of that. So for home delivered meals, we showed information on meals provided by month and information on meals served by zip code, so that we could get a better idea of where we're providing those meals geographically, and then where we provided them over time. Another dashboard. So for the ARPA funds that we're now getting, we needed to report on our spending and performance related metrics. To do this, we partnered with finance to make an easily updatable digital first report. This is an example of the Right Track Plus project information. We have information on the project itself, an overview, a talk about intended outcomes, and then information on the demographics of participants within Right Track Plus. And as we continue with ARPA and more programs are brought online, we'll continue to build this out as we continue forward. Another project that we worked on during 2020 was the 4-to-3 road conversions study. And so this is a companion piece to the longer completed study. And we worked with Public Works to create an interactive dashboards that highlights the benefits and feasibility of converting the various sections of roadways from 4 lanes to 3 lanes. So we have interactive maps that have additional information, and then we've got more graphs and charts that take you through those individual segments. Additionally, we worked with community and economic development and created a companion to the county fiscal health analysis report that you would have seen in early 2020. We worked with CED to create something that breaks down the report, highlights, and provides the data in a more accessible format. So you see information on county funds, land use, value per acre, really all of those areas that were highlighted within that report. And then last but not least, we have the 2021 general election absentee voting dashboard. You may remember this, we've been doing that for a few years now. It's got information on registered voters, ballots sent, ballots accepted, return rates, and then you can continue through to see information down to the precinct level on the number of ballots sent and returned. And as well as information by municipality and ward. You can also filter the charts and the map to see information by any specific geography you might be looking for. And this is being updated weekly until the last 7 days before the election, and then it'll be updated weekly. And it helps free up election staff from answering some of these questions that are easily provided online, and saves them some time and effort and provides the information proactively. And so that was my last example, but I am happy to stand for questions.
Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, thanks, Raphael. And Christine, I don't know if this is for you or maybe John, or it might be a part of a different workshop, but your last report out there on the absentee ballots and really triggered with me, you know, the effort that our election folks have been doing the last few years. We have 3 of the lowest turnout precincts in the state right here in Ramsey County and St. Paul particular. There's been a great effort here on, you know, not only on voter outreach to ensure that folks are getting out to vote and having their voices heard, but really particular outreach within those communities. I think, you know, the absentee ballot data that you have can help with that a little bit. But is there work going on between this team, John, and our elections folks as we continue to concentrate on those low turnout areas to help people understand the importance of voting and help draft up strategies to really make it easy for them to get out and vote and to, you know, increase the turnout within at least those precincts, if not throughout the county?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner McDonough, thank you for your question. The short answer is yes. And we'll hear a little bit more about that from Meter when they go into the work that they did on the advertising and marketing around the past presidential election. But part of our efforts and ongoing conversation with our election division partners and partners throughout, all departments is to use the data that we've got and increasingly leverage what we're finding and what we know from the public representations on the portal to help to inform our overall communication strategy. So specifically when it came to elections, that was, something that following workshops from years ago, there's been a priority for us both on the work that our team does, so using our tools with social media and distribution of materials, those types of things. Those are part of the strategic work that, in this case, Allison did a lot of work with elections on the past campaigns, and that informs then the next cycle. So we continue to work towards that end. And as I mentioned, Meter will have a little bit more on that on the paid advertising and marketing piece of it in a bit here.
Mr. Chair, if I could just follow up real quick. And Kathy, this might be more for you and Ryan and Karen, the deputy county manager of that team. But, my hope here is that, last year was presidential, big year. Next year's gubernatorial, really big year. But, this year we got a mayor's race, we got school board races, making sure that there's consistency in every election cycle, no matter what, because part of the sustainability for people to stay engaged in voting is that consistency of always showing up, no matter what the election is, no matter what's there. It's really important, whether it's a president or a school board member. They all have huge impacts to them in their lives.
Thank you, Jim. I have Mary Jo.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Ortega. This is all great information in the open data portal. Thank you, Christine, for that. How do you decide which data sets and dashboards to feature? So there could be a lot of things that we talk about in the county. And so I know, John, this may be a question for you and leadership. And, how does community help inform what they want to know about what we're doing at the county? So can you talk a little bit about that process and how we might, and how we can engage in that?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner McGuire, thank you for the question. I will give a beginning to the answer, and then I'll hand it off to Christine for part B. But from the time that we were developing the open data portal for launch, we were working with community and other inputs on determining and looking at the industry. So across counties and cities and municipalities in the United States, what are rising to the top as sort of the most valuable data sets that we get the most demand for, and then what are we hearing from community in terms of what's most important. So we launched the open data portal at a code switch event that we hosted at Union Depot back in September 2017, in which it was a community based session, and there were projects that were born of that helped to shape the future of the portal. But a few things, I think, when you look at communities across the country, rise to the top. So we have our, and we see that borne out in the data, So as Christine pointed out, COVID information, obviously of great interest right now. That's been a big priority for us in terms of resources and partnering with public health to put our focus on that. But like our data from our emergency communications center, our 911 center, what's the nature of those calls? When are they happening? That's another very popular data set that we know from community they're interested in, and that we see Christine sees from her peers across the county. That's one ongoing way that we have of getting feedback. And then Christine mentioned the team that she works with of departmental sort of liaisons and the work that they rise up to help to make those priorities and establish how we do that. But then I'm sure I missed some things there. So Christine, if you wouldn't mind finishing out the answer there.
Yeah, no problem. And thanks, Chair and Commissioner, for the question. I think there are sort of three tracks when we think about what makes its way into the portal. I think there are items that have been prioritized by departments, so things that are important to them to get out and communicate. I think there are items that we know from community or from other jurisdictions that have had success with items. So things like 911, uncashed checks come to mind pretty quickly with those. And then we have the sort of need-based items as well. So sometimes we call them low-hanging fruit, but those things that we know that are being requested already, that we can go in and save people some time. So employee compensation is a good example of that. That was a data practices request that we were getting regularly, and we knew that we could get out in front of it by proactively providing that data and sort of democratizing that process a little bit. So I think there are those different ways that they get in. We did do a series of community events in 2019 where we went out to, I think, 4 or 5 different libraries and did an Open Data 101 event. We did learn quite a few things from that, which really the main one being, we need to pair those events with the specific topics to make them really useful. So when we do a community event on elections, going to that community event or being aware of what's communicated during that and getting the key topics that folks are looking for through those events, because the open data specific events draw a very narrow crowd. And so sort of partnering with those main community events to answer the questions that people are looking for, and to get it that way instead of me in a library with the other open data enthusiasts. Can sometimes not be the most productive thing, and we learned that. So we have been trying things out as we've gone along, and I think it's been a learning opportunity, and I think we'll learn as we continue. But yeah, there are a couple of different tracks that prioritize those projects.
Thank you for that, Mr. Chair. If I could ask one more question. So I love looking at data, and if I had time, I would go to just an open data portal talk. But I noticed in a lot of the charts that there was a spike, and I'm guessing it was right about when the pandemic was hitting and people were just wanting information. So there was a big spike, and then it came down. And so does that tell me that people just looked at it and then now are comfortable with it? They don't need to look again? Because if they kept looking at it, the spike would have stayed high, right? So that shows usage of the open data. So they looked at it at that time period, and then they just now we're back to about the same amount of what people were looking at before. Can you just talk a little bit about the spikes that we saw and what we read from that?
Yeah, I can talk about that a little bit. Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Commissioner. So there were a couple of spikes during 2020 and 2021. I think fall, so September, October of 2020 really saw the most traffic to the site as far as individual users and page views. And a lot of that, I think, coincided with the beginning of the school year, spikes in COVID. And then as that absentee dashboard also went out and started getting publicized, that was a lot of our September, October 2020 traffic. A lot of it was elections focused. And I think there was a lot of social media. It was included in a lot of those pushes. So there was a significant portion of that was elections related. And then another portion that was COVID case data in sort of fall of 2020. I know anecdotally that we also have quite a few school districts and cities that push people to our data as well around COVID-19. So I think there may have also been a spike from the city of St. Paul, if I remember correctly, in September with social media as well, and possibly SPPD.
If I may add one thing on there, that we see the trend also on our web traffic, our general web traffic, Commissioner McGuire. So it tracks very similarly, that there was that period of intense interest right around there. But the long-term trend is that both on the data portal at ramseycounty.us and our applications, we just see steady growth, sort of month over month and year over year. So looking at, that spike sure stands out on the graph that Christine showed before. But if you just look over time, the steady use just continues to grow.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Mr. Chair, seeing no questions, we'll move into the final part of our presentation here today. And wanted to just provide a little background on our advertising marketing master contract before we have Meter present on the work they've been doing since January of 2020. So back when I joined Ramsey County some years ago, let's say, I made visits to all departments and divisions around the county, talking with environmental health. They have always had a real strong commitment to outreach and education and communications, and they have always had the resources to push that in ways that other areas of the county haven't. So very interested in talking to them early on with the amount of paid marketing and advertising they were doing and the way that they were doing that. And as we talked together these years ago about their approach, we learned that what they were doing at that time on the maturity curve was to have contracts with direct media outlets. So staff would work with procurement and have a contract with, say, the Pioneer Press, and a contract with, say, NPR, and a contract, let's say, with Radio Ray, and a contract with KSTV. So many direct contracts with media outlets to buy and place advertisements. And as we talked together, their interest was in moving towards a model of having one agency that could do multiple things for them. So one would be working on creative, so that the creative approach of that division would align with the county's brand standards, that they would have a professional buying strategy. So instead of having to work with procurement to develop all these one-off contracts, you would have a professional advertising marketing firm that would do your media planning, do your buying, and consult with you on your strategy. And that then could provide the metrics on the back end. And so environmental health moved forward. They had this contract, and about, right after they had it inked, we started talking about, okay, well, now how do we bring that to the next level and have this represent the entire county? So we knew then that environmental health was going to be the predominant and purchaser of advertising and marketing. However, let's take advantage of the entire organization's size, so that if we get a grant in veterans, or we've got some dollars in Parks and Rec, or libraries wants to go out with their own advertising marketing campaign, we can leverage all of those things as a $750 million organization instead of a number of distinct campaigns or distinct departments. So by pursuing this full contract on behalf of the county, this master contract, we really can partner, in this case with Meter, who we selected following, give Allison a lot of credit for running a great competitive process and bringing in partners from throughout the county to help us select Meter as our agency for this contract. But now we can really use their professional expertise to get the best value for those ad buys. And they'll talk about how, they're able to leverage that even get more sort of freebies and add-ons from outlets for us to help us get the best bang for our buck and spread the word as efficiently and effectively as we can for our taxpayers' dollar. So the last thing then I would mention on this before we turn it over to Kirsten and Justin is, we of course continue as the holders of the contract. The communications division works very closely with them on the creative strategy, working with our department partners to make sure that we're fulfilling the needs that they have and leveraging Meter's expertise to help us drive those goals forward for all of our department partners that are doing paid advertising and marketing. So with that, I would like to introduce Kirsten and Justin for their section, and time to meet Meter.
Thank you, John, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. We're really pleased to be here to share the highlights of our work. So starting with 2020 and an overview of all that we together accomplished. You're looking here at a graph of the year of 2020 and all of the different campaigns that were executed on your behalf. There were 12 different campaigns in different departments with which we worked. They're listed in order of highest to lowest. You'll see environmental health and the recycling campaign is the most active campaign running all year long, followed by workforce solutions, elections, HIV testing, emergency assistance, and onward. As we moved into the end of 2020, COVID-19 and the pandemic became a significant area requiring quick communication, nimble communication. So as we moved into the fall and Q4, we became very active in getting messaging out related in some capacity to COVID-19, and that continued into 2021. John mentioned the leveraging ability of having a master contract. That's when that really kicked in and came to bear. The fact that we had all of these strong media relationships in the community already, we were able to essentially pick up a phone and get campaigns up and running, and also able to negotiate some excellent rates. We are very data-driven at Meter, so we do provide detailed results, reports for all of the campaigns that we do, but wanted to share with you just an overall summary total of what was delivered. So we spent just under $500,000 in paid media across a variety of media channels. And we, on top of that, negotiated just over $500,000 in added value. So what that means is we were able to get no charge commercials, no charge placements, interviews, bonus mentions. So much of Ramsey County messaging is really a public service announcement. So our media partners really stepped up, again, particularly during COVID-19 crisis, to make sure that we were getting our messages out into the community and doing that at no charge or as little charge as possible. A couple of other key metrics we look at when we look at your year-end numbers. One, engagement and reaction, action as a result of the messaging. And two, impressions, just how many people were reaching across the county. And in terms of that engagement, on all of our digital platforms, we're able to really measure how many people are taking interest in the message, how many are clicking on our ads, watching our ads, visiting the website as a result of the ads. And for all Ramsey County campaigns combined, we saw an average of 3 to 5% of those exposed to the messaging clicking on the messaging. That more than doubles industry averages and even, frankly, our agency averages, really speaking to the fact that our messages are very important to the community. We're talking about elections, we're talking about COVID-19, food and basic needs, recycling. So the community is very interested in these messages, and that showed. All told, we also delivered just under 1 million impressions across the county. And you'll see in a minute that we did focus on some key zip code areas within the county, but always while trying to ensure that we're reaching an audience countywide. So here's a look at all of the different media partners. There are 47 different media partners here that we negotiated with on your behalf and communicated with. Our emphasis has always been a healthy mix and breadth of media, because we do know that the members of your community use the media in different ways, and different media channels have different strengths. So we were in billboards, we were in transit stations, we were on the sides of buses, we were on TV and cable, we were in print and in many print online entities, radio, and then of course digital. So in some capacity, we were everywhere. We did have an emphasis with all of our campaigns on racial and ethnic diversity in our messaging and in our media placement. 36% of our total paid media dollars went to entities owned by communities of color. That was a significant objective of ours, and it continues to be in 2021, and that continues to grow. You'll see here a list of about 17 different diverse media outlets with whom we worked. This also continues to grow. This year, as a matter of fact, most recently, we've expanded this into a number of media channels that really live on YouTube and Facebook to reach the Somali community and the Oromo community and really connect at that community level. So we're looking at those traditional mass media outlets as well as those emerging outlets on the digital side. This map shows that county coverage, and then it shows those zip codes where we concentrated additional dollars and additional efforts to ensure that we were really reaching our vulnerable populations and our communities of color.
We have a question.
Question, Commissioner Carter?
Tony?
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate seeing the focus that you have placed together with us on ensuring that there is an outreach to racially and ethnically diverse communities, and to see the list of partners that you've had. As I look on, it says page 1, but as I look on this page, at the 36% racially and ethnically diverse community paid media, I just wanted to know, just to confirm that that is of your total media spend, the 470,000, and you're continuing to emphasize that placement and that work together with partners. You would have heard the question I asked earlier about the outreach to youth, BIPOC businesses and organizations. This is a good representation of your focus there. And even, to think toward partnering more intensely to ensure that youth, for example, in the media arena, videography being a very, very prime area of creative arts, may be able to partner with us. But I just wanted to, actually I'm going off, I just wanted to focus on that number and ask if it is of the total spend or of a particular category of paid media.
That is of the total spend, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. And we work closely with Ramsey County Communications team to ensure that we have translations that are on point, and that we are getting input from the trusted messengers, and also getting even assets. Right now we have a really great video testimonial campaign running in language fully, with members of the community in the video themselves giving testimonials about the safety of vaccination. So, and they have had input into the media channels and choices, and it's been a great collaboration.
I don't see any other questions. You want to go ahead, John?
Yes, please. Go ahead, Kristen.
All right, Justin.
All right, so I'm going to give a quick run through of all of the campaigns that we ran in 2020 and 2021 this year. So almost the last 2 years. So just going to, I guess, starting with Ramsey Recycle. So this was the largest of the campaigns that Kirsten mentioned. So for the campaign that we started last year, we captured over 1,500 different unique images related to recycling. So all these are images that are owned by the county now, and produced over 388 unique pieces of creative. And that was with that media spend that Kristen talked about, that's just under 300,000. So you can see some of the examples of the creative that we produced for the campaign and the library. So we have a summary slide like this for each of the campaigns that we ran or are running in 2020 and 2021. So all the different media types represented. And then a little note here that this campaign, part of this campaign, did win an award from the Minnesota Association of Government Communicators, a silver award recipient. And then you can see here the languages that the campaign ran in. So for each of the campaigns that I'm going to run through here, all of those pieces of information are present. So if you want to go back and take a look, I'm going to fly through them pretty quickly right now. So the elections campaign, of course, last year, and then we are actually running now an elections campaign this year as well. Some of the real top line results, the types of results that we track for these campaigns, you can see ad impressions and clicks, but then of course we want to attribute to the ultimate goal of any of the campaigns. But for this one, it was specifically voter turnout. So we all know we had the highest general election voter turnout in the history, but this was of course part of a collaborative effort between a lot of different communications and community outreach groups. So really part of a bigger story, but of course advertising was one part of that story.
If I could just jump in there real quick with just a quick anecdote. MinPost, we ran banner ads on their website, and they had more people clicking on our elections ad than at any other time in their history. So it was their most clicked on ad ever. Just pretty interesting.
Yep. Workforce Solutions, we promoted both community career labs and career force services. Emergency assistance campaign, service center usage, so a campaign promoting use of service centers. Food and basic needs campaign. COVID health messaging campaign. So this was the first of the COVID campaigns we launched. This one was about testing and general health precautions. One of the larger multilingual campaigns we ran. We ran a warrant resolution campaign in partnership with the Minnesota Judicial Branch. So both video production and then ran a campaign with the videos we produced. Veteran Services campaign. A Truth in Taxation campaign. Again, produced a video explaining property taxes and then promoted that information through a campaign. Landlord assistance campaign, HIV home testing campaign. So those were all the campaigns during 2020. So we have a similar chart here of all of the campaigns currently running or did run in 2021. So very similar lineup to the previous year, or in numbers anyway. So we launched a new Ramsey Recycles campaign a few months back. So you can see that in market now. A big additional component to the Ramsey Recycles campaign is the addition of influencers in BIPOC communities. So this one here is specifically a Spanish speaking influencer. So she's posting the information directly to her Instagram and Facebook and other social media accounts. And so a lot of engagement there with her audience. Auto theft prevention campaign. This was a joint campaign between Minnesota Commerce Department and then the Hennepin and Ramsey attorneys offices. Online career fairs campaign. This is currently promoting the online career fairs that are available through Career Force. WIC campaign ran this summer. Parks and Rec campaign promoting golf courses. Right Track Plus campaign promoting the Right Track Plus intern program. Inclusive Workplaces cohort campaign. Battery safety campaign, joint campaign between Washington County, Hennepin County, and Ramsey County. And then another COVID-19 vaccine or COVID campaign specific to the vaccine. So this was phase 1 of the campaign. And then in phase 2 of the campaign, it was adjusted based on a lot of feedback we received from the different communities, and also had the addition of community connectors messaging to really take advantage of those trusted community connectors. And then the addition of color was proven to be more effective. You can see some of the top line results here. I'll let you go through this yourself, but really the highlight of the results was the additional traffic received by the non-English pages to the campaign. And then the phase 3 of the COVID-19 vaccine campaign was specific to the incentive for the vaccine. And some of the results really related to the increase in web traffic. We're at the center of that success story. And we have results for all of the campaigns here, but we won't go through them all right now for the sake of time, but I encourage you to go back and take a look.
And just a couple notes, looking ahead and some highlights of 2021, we are continuing to expand influencer marketing, so pulling in more communities of color and key influencers to convey our messaging, and also continuing to collaborate in terms of the branding and campaign overall look and feel. You'll see that all of these campaigns, though they're unique and have their own personality, they are all closely aligned with the Ramsey County brand. And some of the creative is done by Ramsey County Communications and some is done by us or augmented by us. So we continue to keep an eye on keeping those brand messages consistent throughout.
Yeah. Sometimes there's just one ad that's already been created. So then our team will create all the different versions that are needed. Sometimes your team is creating all those different versions. We can work in a number of different ways. So we're able to be very flexible in how exactly that execution happens.
Thank you. Trista?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for this great presentation. I appreciate it. I especially wanted to say great job on all of the recycling and energy campaign. Obviously, there was a large budget to go with it, but it was really well executed, and it was really fun to see people from our community, the photo shoots that people know, individuals, some of our own staff that got to participate. And I think that was a really great way to go, to use our own residents in those photo shoots. I think it was very clever, and I would encourage us to do that in all the other areas, even if the budgets aren't as good. And then I just want to share a comment. Images make a huge difference, right? The pictures of people to the messaging. And in some of those images where we're using stock photos, I will tell you, marketing falls really flat. Maybe it's a personal pet peeve, but this is an area, where cultural understanding is important. And so when you use stock photos of veterans, the message is loud and clear that we don't actually care about veterans because those are not veterans, right? The picture you use of a guy and he's wearing a ball cap, like it's trash, honestly. And veterans notice that. And so when we're talking about cultural pictures and imagery, we need to make sure we go all the way, and that there are many cultures that are represented in our images. So I just needed to share that. And then I did have one question is, in that line of thinking, as we're picking images, as we're developing these, are we checking in with our trusted messengers or other community groups to say, like, this is good or this is bad, or who's approving the final images?
Mr. Chair, I'm happy to address that question.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Commissioner Castillo, thanks for the question. So our team collaborates on that, and as Jeff and Kirsten were mentioning, when we're working with a department partner, our preference is always to take original photos if we have the budget and the time and the scope and priority. But sometimes we do need to use stock photography in order to fill a need or meet a deadline, and so we will go that route. And that's been the case with the veterans images that you'll see there. And in these cases, we'll partner with the department staff and the department leadership to talk through those very issues that you brought forward. And then take the next step on that in the continuous improvement cycle I was mentioning is to work with community and our different networks there to get input on that. So one of the examples that Meter gave in their presentation was in the imagery around the COVID-19 campaign. That was somewhere where we had, we brought forward some images that we had proposed and we're using, and then they've evolved over time based on the feedback that we received from the groups that we engaged on those questions.
Are you done, Trista? I lost you here.
Yes, thank you for that, John.
Okay,
May I?
Mary
Mr.
Jo?
Chair?
Oh, thanks. Did you have something else you wanted to add, John, or, oh?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner, I might just ask Justin if we could stop sharing the screen at this point.
Okay.
And thank you. So Commissioner McGuire?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is a little bit along with what Commissioner Matis Castillo said, although she referenced the dollars that we were able to spend on Ramsey Recycles. And so my question is sort of, how many of these budgets are sort of supplemented by a different funding source? So Ramsey Recycles, we have R&E, we have a solid waste management tax, right? That's helping go into that. So that's why we have a stronger budget for Ramsey Recycles. And I think on the auto theft prevention, that's a dollar on our insurance policies that we should get from the state, right? And I don't know if we're getting any extra dollars for the auto theft prevention work that's coming maybe through the county attorney's office. But I was just curious if you would comment on the different funding levels. I mean, I don't know if we have any other funding sources that are helping with this. And I'm glad you're trying to maximize all of the budgets, because we do have a few that do get extra funding from specific sources. So if you could talk about that a little bit.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner McGuire, thanks for the question. So I think you hit the nail on the head there in terms of how funding sources and budgets can drive how much we're able to do in the paid advertising and marketing arenas. And so using that example of the Solid Waste Fund, Environmental Health for many, many years has dedicated, as part of their approach and their mission, is dedicated that outreach resource into paid advertising and marketing. We've generally, departments would have smaller budgets to work from, but we always look to leverage grants and leverage federal funding, certainly through CARES and ARPA, to help share the messages. And we talk about the COVID campaigns. You know, that was something that I recall Director Holly and the team talking about. You know, we had the budget and hammering out what that dollar amount would be that we would effectively use for trusted messengers versus paid advertising marketing to get all aspects of that campaign rolling. And in that case, we had I'm just taking a little bit of a side here, but this is to give Meter some credit and share a little bit about how they work. You know, I think we went with them with a proposal for a $300,000 campaign on Friday, and they had something back to us on Tuesday, and we were in market like within the next 2 days. So we're able to really, really snap to when we do find that those funding sources become available to us outside of the regular department budgets, which we also, you know, will utilize and use in addition to grants, as I mentioned.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I appreciate that, Mr. Chair. Thanks.
Thank you. Well, we're getting to the hour, so I just want to say thank you to the entire communications team for the great work. Very impressive, I think, the work you've done in the last year. It's been, I think it's highlighted Ramsey County. I know I have constituents that have noticed that Ramsey County is more in the forefront now in their minds. We do have a 1 o'clock reminder, a 1 o'clock closed session. And so we have approximately an hour for lunch. So have a good day.
Thanks, everyone.